As evidence, we have the multiplication of unilateral measures which have the potential of dangerously weakening the capacity of the international community to respond effectively to the complex challenges faced by the world. The rise of national egoism, the trivialization of xenophobia and the rejection of the other, so many significant symptoms and signals for as if the values of equality, solidarity and justice are receding. We are, of course, expressing our concern in the face of these developments to reiterate our commitment to the values of solidarity, tolerance and mutual respect. The humanity is at stake. This particularity of the international context is compounded by violence, which is a reality which is afflicting millions of Africans in the different areas of conflict. To this we add the rise of the scourge of terrorism, which continues to ravage the Lake Chad Basin, the Sahel, and the Horn of Africa. Furthermore, speed up the reform of the Union, our tool of our struggle. Speed up integration, which is indispensable for our development. Speed up the efforts to promote peace, justice, and inclusion, essential conditions for social cohesion. In this regard, we happily note that the first phase of the negotiations on the continental free trade areas has been crossed with success. This summit is expected to adopt the agreement. In fact, it has been adopted at the closed session, and they should endorse the recommendations of the leader of this initiative, President Mahamadou Issoufou. Another flagship project of the first decade of implementation 10-year plan of the Agenda 2063 is the launching during this summit of the single market for air transport, African air transport. This is an initiative that has been expected for a long time. In the same vein, I would like to call upon the summit to adopt the protocol on the free movement of persons and the African passport, so that the Africans who face so many difficulties and very often are subjected to humiliation to travel outside Africa stop being strangers on their own continent. I want to underscore two issues. First of all, the fight against the illicit capital flows outside Africa. The report of the high-level panel led by President Mbeki established the scope of this scourge. That is, to put an end to this hemorrhage is an imperative need, and the member states should make this struggle a priority. In a related manner, we should see the opportunity of the theme of this year, devoted to the fight against corruption, to take decisive action against this scourge, which impedes development and is corroding the social cohesion. I am convinced that President Muhammadu Buhari, who will coordinate this theme, will give the necessary impetus to this struggle. Then the need to operationalize as soon as possible our Pan-African financial institutions, the ratifications of the related instruments. I appeal to all the member states and other stakeholders to pool efforts in order to find the responses to this crisis and to silence the guns by 2020. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, aware that Africa and the rest of the world are in an interdependent situation and that our destinies are linked. And during the past year, we have given sustained attention to the promotion of our strategic partnerships. A framework agreement, a strategic framework agreement in the area of peace and security was signed with the United Nations in April 2017. It has been supplemented by another agreement on the implementation of Agendas 2063 and Agenda 2030. I have the pleasure to point out that trilateral cooperation is gradually being established between the African Union, the United Nations, and the European Union. There is no need for me to recall that in the present phase, we have only two choices, that is to move forward resolutely in the implementation of the reform, or again leave the way for a failure. It is another failure whose consequences will seriously dent the image and the credibility of our unity, liberation, integration, development, and democracy of the African Union.
And would like also to express my pleasure in attending this summit after the elapse of 40 years of the start of the Afro-Arab cooperation and the holding of its summit in Cairo in 1977, which has laid down the firm basis for cooperation between our two organizations during the last 40 years, and when our leaders, which our leaders have developed through their combined efforts, which led to the organization of 3 joint summits since 2010. And it is important for us to continue our work together in order to ensure the success of our 5th summit, which is due to take place in Saudi Arabia next year in 2019. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the common space between the Arab world and Africa is still characterized by the existence of hotbeds and instability, and this imposes on us to double our common efforts and also to use our capacities in a complementary manner in order to face up these challenges and tackle the root causes which led to the emergence of these conflicts. And our opportunities in success will be greater if we work together and if we rely on each other in order to achieve the goals that we have set ourselves, and which most of the time are considered as being closer to one another or the same. And here I would like to mention in particular the crisis in Libya, which represents a top priority for both the Arab League and the African Union, and where combined efforts are being made in order to put an end to the interim period which Libya is going through, and also unite its institutions, and also restore stability, and also achieve the pending issues. And I do consider that it is possible for the African Union and the League to play a more important role in order to assist our brothers in Libya in this effort. This as part of the quartet in which we are working together with the United Nations and the European Union. And this was referred to by Mr. Moussa Faki. I would like to reiterate the fact here that the League is prepared to contribute in any effort, both at the political and technical levels, in order to tackle the issue of migration, in order to face up the violations which they are exposed to in Libya, either through the assistance of the Libyan institutions or the neighboring countries, or the tripartite mechanism which was set up between the African Union, the United Nations, and the European Union. And it is necessary here for me to record once again our great appreciation to the firm African position in supporting the Palestinian peoples in its effort to put an end to the occupation of Israel of its land, and would like here to commend the African states despite the strong pressure that is exerted on them in standing up with the Palestinian cause, and would like to express our appreciation for their rejection of the unilateral American decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel and the transfer of the American embassy.
Chairperson Moussa Faki Mahamat and I signed the UN-AU framework on enhanced partnership in peace and security. Yesterday, we signed the second framework on implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the African Union's Agenda 2063. We are working together successfully across the continent. With Africa firmly in the lead, we can and will do more. I stand here on behalf of the United Nations system and reaffirm our strong commitment to the member states and the people of Africa. I strongly believe Africa is one of the greatest forces for good in our world. Excellencies, as we move forward together, I see 5 areas for strengthened partnership. First, peace and security. Let me begin by thanking African governments for leading the way in contributing troops and police to help save lives and keep the peace around the world. We will never forget the service and sacrifice of all those who have given their lives for peace. Our first shared obligation is to confront the root causes of conflict by strengthening prevention through diplomacy and mediation. Peacekeeping operations must be stronger and safer, better led, trained and equipped, more mobile, flexible and agile, with better intelligence and better connections to the population. And finally, I want to mobilize greater support for peacekeeping operations and especially for troop-contributing countries. But UN peacekeeping is not the solution to all crisis situations. We need different missions for different contexts, including peace enforcement and counter-terrorist operations. Partnership with the African Union and sub-regional organizations offers us the means to achieve this. AMISOM is demonstrating how an African-led force can conduct offensive operations against terrorists while helping to provide security for a political process. The G5 joint force to tackle terrorism, human trafficking and drug smuggling in its troubled region. And the multinational joint task force against Boko Haram is also tackling terrorism in the Lake Chad Basin. But these operations need the support of the entire international community. Let me state clearly, migration is a positive global phenomenon. It powers economic growth, reduces inequalities, connects diverse societies, and helps us ride the demographic waves of population, both growth and decline. I condemn the widespread abuse and exploitation of migrants that are a stain on our common humanity. Slavery has made too much harm to Africa in the past for us to be able to accept new forms of slavery today. We must maximize the benefits of orderly migration while stamping out abuses and prejudice. These require more legal opportunities for migration, with better coordination between countries of origin, destination and transit. That is the only way to be effective in cracking down on smugglers and traffickers that perpetrate so horrible violence. For example, Africa has much to teach the world about a positive, constructive and effective approach to migration. All countries have much to gain from an ambitious global compact for safe, orderly and regular migration. Excellencies, this year, 2018, is African Anti-Corruption Year, and this is the 5th area for our strengthened partnership. I commend your decision to highlight this scourge and offer you our strong support. Corruption contributes to the trafficking of people and drugs, the plundering of natural resources and wildlife. It can undermine trust in governments and compromise peace and security. It is estimated that for every dollar given in official development assistance, a dollar is lost to corruption. The consequences are far-reaching and devastating. And the UN is working with national anti-corruption commissions to end impunity and bring perpetrators to justice. Combating corruption, tax evasion, and illicit financial flows requires an unimpeachable commitment to transparency and accountability. Together, African Union and the United Nations, we can end this menace and make sure that public funding and investments go where they are needed most, to the populations. Excellencies, this year also marks another significant moment for Africa and the world. The centennial of the birth of a great father of Africa, Nelson Mandela. Through his life and example, Madiba reminded us that to make progress, we must always look forward, no matter how difficult it might be. Nelson Mandela had every reason to feel bitter about the past, but he transcended his personal history to bring his country and our world hope for a brighter future. Today, around the world, we see skepticism about multilateralism. But I strongly believe that moving forward together, the United Nations and the African Union can show that multilateralism is our best and only hope. Together, we can lead the way to a brighter day, and I look forward to continue our joint work for Africa and for the world.